Welcome to episode 13. Ignore the ominous number. Ignore the fact that this Kerbal engineer says that this vessel's name is Adrian. We are launching this thing into orbit because we now have a couple more interplanetary windows. This one is Moho. So we're going to send this to Moho. Hopefully we have enough fuel to get it into orbit. I kind of eyeballed it, didn't really actually bother with the calculations and determining of all of the numbers that I need and whatnot. It says this is Adrian. That is actually not the name of the vessel. There are two probe cores on this vehicle, though, which will become a little more understandable in a moment once we deploy the bearings here. I've actually named this Rocky because we are sending it to Moho, and Moho looks a lot like Rocky. It's the same color and the same appearance, really. So this is going to, if everything goes to plan at least, orbit Moho, and we're going to send Adrian, a little lander, down to the surface of Moho to collect even more science from the surface there. So there go the fairings there, and it is very dark. We're launching into the night, but you can kind of just about make out the outline of the spacecraft there. So now just finishing up our orbital insertion here. And yeah, once we get that ready to go, we'll get ourselves circularized. So now going for 80-kilometer apoapsis. We just warp ahead. Come out of the atmosphere now. And yeah. So this is something that I like to do. Is a fun challenge for myself. It's very ambitious, but kind of combining several different spacecraft into one interplanetary vehicle. A little bit inspired by what's happening with the Bepi Colombo mission. Of course, Bepi Colombo being the European Space Agency's version, going to Moho with a combination orbiter and also small lander. So first I get my encounter here, and you can see it's about almost 1900 meters per second, which is way too high. And with some tweaking, I'm able to adjust that down with messing around with my ejection angles and approach stuff and all of those different numbers and values. And eventually we get to about 1700 meters per second, which is still a little bit higher than it really should be for Moho. But it's good enough. It will suffice. So I just lost the encounter there. So with more tweaking of maneuver nodes. All of this plotting my maneuver took me maybe about 30 minutes in real time. I've condensed it here to about 40 seconds. So now we deploy our solar panels so we have some power. And the optimal burn time is in 11 days from now. So we launched a little bit early. I just configured the naming there. So in the meantime, we have another interplanetary launch window. That window, of course, being Duna. So this here, we've called this one the Shaihulud after the sandworm from Dune, because that was the only thing I could think of that sounded like Duna. Yeah, it was very... Not too motivated with the names here. I just found out to come up with something that would work. So yeah, just launching this one into orbit as well. Now, Duna is a considerably easier target to reach than Moho, mostly because it is not as far away and is traveling slower than Kerbin. Moho, of course, goes very fast and is in an elliptical and also inclined orbit, making it very expensive to launch there directly from Kerbin, although I don't really want to wait for an Eve window to do some gravity transfers and all of that stuff, because that would take a very long time to get there. So now, kind of the same flight profile, a little bit steeper. We don't actually get nearly as close into orbit with this one. But we just complete the insertion, get to the launch stage there, and this is very overkill. We have 4 kilometers per second in this upper stage. Once we get to Duna, honestly, we could probably take this thing to Ike as well. But, yeah, just getting ourselves circularized here. And now it's just a matter of plotting ourselves a course for Duna. Burn straight up to kind of flatten my trajectory and get a more circular orbit because we have tons of delta V. We have so much margin for error on this. So yeah, deploy the solar panels there. I've got more. I've got 6 of these because Duna is far away from Kerbin, as you can see there. It's farther from the sun, and the light power intensity follows the inverse square law. So if you double the distance from the sun, your panels will produce a quarter of the power. And you can see a little over a kilometer per second here, and we've already got a pretty good encounter. We'll do some corrections in the future to actually get ourselves closer and maybe even consider some aero braking, although I don't really want to break off those panels there. And we can just immediately burn for Duna, honestly. There's probably a more optimal approach, but I can't be bothered to spend another 30 minutes with maneuver nodes. So we just start our burn. Nice low thrust, about a G of acceleration on this stage here. And now we've started our ascent away from the planet Kerbin. We'll never be this close again, unless we do something to, bring this back. Which we probably won't, because we'll have much better technology by the time this thing gets here. By the time it arrives at Duna, I mean. And just finishing up there, and yeah, that is us. So now plot a correction to bring ourselves nice and close. I'm going to go into maybe an inclined orbit, although it would be a little bit difficult to get to Ike from there. And yeah, set ourselves the alarm. And that is us. Watch this thing warp away, drifting away from the planet Kerbin. So this is another dual part. The top part is an orbiter, while the bottom is a lander vehicle with a heat shield in there that will help us, get us onto the surface of Duna. And we take some magnetometer science from the sun while we're at it. And yeah, up next, we have come time to burn for Moho. So get Rocky lined up here. 1.7 kilometers per second here, which is about half the delta V on this stage. With that upper stage KW engine, a very high thrust and also high efficiency engine, which is not a combination that you see very often. But yeah, we just start the burn. A bit of an aggressive path, honestly. But we're burning direct to Moho. It's going to be aggressive. We'll probably have to slow down by a similar amount once we actually get there, which, is going to be a problem for future me. But we just get our encounter nice and close, plot ourselves a correction to fix our inclination and get right up there. And yeah, there we go. Just bringing it nice and close. We'll have to do some more inclination changes once we get to that point. But yeah, that is us. We've now got several interplanetary missions careening towards their destinations. 90 days to the corrections. We'll have to set an alarm for that and wait for that to happen. In the meantime, we have now another very ambitious mission. With those launches, our program is strapped for cash once again, so we've accepted a bunch of different contracts, and we're going to try to complete all of them with this mission here. So you can see around the moon here, we're going to set it as our target. This blue orbit, we have a contract to put a satellite into that orbit, and then we're also going to land on the surface of the moon, but this won't be any ordinary landing. This is kind of derivative of that Minmus relay mission. And you can also see we have Jarek, our engineer, there in the command seat, and the other two are tourists who want to land on the surface of the moon and come home. So we're going to try to land them safely and bring them all back, while also deploying a satellite. And of course we have the science data from space around the moon, plant a flag on the surface. So if this goes well, then we should have enough funds to upgrade our tracking station to the maximum level, which is really the aim of all of this. And that way we'll be able to actually have connection with our interplanetary spacecraft, specifically the Froon, which, if you remember, is on its way to Eve. And at this time we have no connectivity with it, and it has a correction to execute in a couple of weeks. So it would be nice if we could actually communicate with it for that correction work. So just getting ourselves into orbit now, deploy the fairings. And yeah, you can see we've made some upgrades to the Minmus surface relay design. I deploy one of the solar panels on the return stage. If you remember, they exploded when leaving Minmus. I've moved them to a place where that shouldn't happen, but, not going to take that risk. We've also added the two large antennas that we've unlocked recently. And yeah, just some more fuel, more experience. We have recently unlocked the seismometer, seismic accelerometer, which will give us even more science from the surface of the moon. Let's get ourselves circularized now and plot our course for the moon. So, it turns out we're basically in the right place for it. So we just start burning prograde and burn out all the fuel on that stage. And now we're on the lander stage. which will take us another couple hundred meters per second, but we've got a lot of fuel in this. We've got a whole 2.2 kilometers per second. Now, the thing is, I didn't plan this out very well. So I wasted a little bit of delta V burning myself towards the moon here, and we'll have to do another correction. The other thing is that target orbit is in a retrograde orbit, and it's very high, which means that landing on the moon from this orbit is going to be inefficient, because we're going to be coming down with lots of speed that we'll have to kill, and we'll also have, we'll be going counter to the rotation of the moon, which was not that much, but it is a few meters per second extra that we'll have to basically waste just to get there. Now we do have magnetometer science that we haven't brought back. We've transmitted it, but there's still some to be had from bringing it back to Kerbin. And we're also inclined. The contract is to put it in an equatorial orbit, and we are nowhere near that. So we are just going to burn ourselves into a circular orbit and then worry about the corrections. And once we get there, as it happens, it's within the tolerances. So now we can deploy the satellite. It's just strapped to the side there. And the contract requires that it has a seismometer on it, which was a waste of money, honestly. So now we have to transfer fuel down into the lander stage. So that way we have enough fuel to actually land ourselves, and then we can worry about pumping fuel around so that we can actually return home. This is going to be cutting it close. We may not be able to return, actually, which would be very unfortunate with the first tourists that our space program is ever hiring, because they pay a lot of money and we need money. So now falling towards the surface of the moon here, going completely the wrong direction. And I'm going to try to land somewhere in that flat area outside the crater there, because that is not a place we've landed before. So falling in now. There's the landing indicator there, and I'm going to try to put myself ahead of those craters that you can see. So somewhere in this flat region. And we're coming in a little bit steeply. So now, start killing some of that speed so I don't dash myself into the ground here, and I actually have some room to work with. 2 kilometers above the surface. We're falling pretty fast. And it looks like we're going to smash into the ground right there. So, burn upwards. Start killing some vertical speed. Come on. We are falling way too fast. Oh, we're gonna hit the mountain there. Come on, go up. Go up. Up faster. I think we'll be good. We're just cruising across the surface, whizzing by below us. A mere 400 meters up. And we might hit that crater rim on our way through, which would not be nice. Just gonna slow down even more. We are really cutting it close with the fuel that we have on hand. And yeah, I think we're falling a little quickly now, so I'm just gonna start angling up a little more. I want to make it over this crater, and that one that's right next to it there. Give myself plenty of range to work with. So now, just cruising over. I think we've got enough going here that we can cruise the last bit over and then land in that flat part right over there. Keep slowing down. 140 meters per second. I think we'll be good. We'll be cutting it close on fuel though. Yeah, there's the landing indicator. Okay, final approach. We're below 80 meters per second now. And yeah, let's just point retrograde and slow the rest of the way down. 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, yeah, we're just going to slow down a little. Don't want to go too crazy here with these tourists. They've never been in space before. They don't know what the procedure is. So now, final approach. Just gently set it down and touchdown. And I think, okay, don't fall over. We are on something of a slope, I think. Yeah, that's definitely a slope. But it looks like this thing is holding itself steady. I think we're good. So let's take a crew report. The Midlands, the only flat place on this not made of cheese rock. Well, as you know, in real life, of course, the moon landings were faked because the moon is actually made of cheese, and you can't really land on cheese. It is not conducive to that. Pressure gauge is sitting there motionless. Perhaps you should tap it a few times. So there's the seismometer. We can record seismic data. This is a feature of the Interstellar mod, not in the base capability of the stock game. But basically, it will monitor the entire moon. If anything collides with the moon and explodes on the surface, then it records the seismic data from that, and you can get more science by slamming things into the moon. Jarek's gonna come out and do her science as well. So we'll do surface sample Darker Midlands made of basaltic rocks. You're in a peculiar way, and the stars look very different today. Call back to the good old David Bowie classic. I hope we have enough fuel. Hopefully, we don't strand the tourists. Yeah, the tourists can't EVA, so they can't actually read the flag, so we're just not going to tell them about the fuel situation. So now, Jarek, of course, has to go collect the science and put it in the capsule for storage. But yeah, in real life, of course, if you want to monitor impacts on a body, you typically would have to put multiple seismometers, and that's what they did on the Apollo missions. Is they, for some of the later landings, they would put seismic instruments on the ground, and using those with the network, they could actually accurately measure seismic signatures from impact around the moon. And that way, by measuring the way that the impact waves slosh around the inside, you can do a bunch of science. Seismology is not my strength, if you couldn't tell. But you can basically learn stuff about the structure of the inside of the moon, and that's how we know something about the layers of the moon, and how we know that it's seismically not very active, unsurprisingly. But that is not the case here. Here you can just do it with one single seismometer on the surface. Yeah, we'll just get back inside. Put that in there. And now transferring fuel back into the return stage. So there's a couple of different fuel tanks on there. There's a short one and two kind of mid-length ones on the sides there. Just transferring everything symmetrically. So now we don't have enough delta V to make it into orbit. You need about 600 to launch into lunar orbit, and we have 500. So we'll have to take some mass reduction measures. Jarek is fortunately an engineer, so she can EVA and perform rocket surgery. There's these two very large battery banks on the side there, which are probably giving us a good bit of mass that we can just take off, because we'll have solar panels and batteries inside the capsule. We also remove some of the solar panels and the drogue chute, which is kind of cutting it close, and we get about 20 meters per second from doing all of these measures. But that's still not enough. We need about 70 more meters per second, and I just don't know if we'll be able to get that with what we have here. So, instead what we're going to do is detach this. We're going to hover a little over to the side. I want to land on the relay craft. And we're just going to put this down here, so that way we don't have to worry about it falling over and breaking something off. And this will also make it much easier to perform rocket surgery on these fuel tanks, because there's not a lot of fuel on this vehicle, and we can probably drop at least one of these tanks by just removing the fuel from it. So Jarek's going to get out again. And now it is time for us to dissect this vehicle. So let's move that antenna right over there. And what else can we do? We have to reshuffle some things before we can actually start organizing the fuel tanks. So I think we have to pump the fuel around in the vehicle first. We're going to have to go back inside and do that. Get in the seat. Okay. Let's put up our fuel and oxidizer. And yeah, I think there's enough that this can all fit into one of those medium length tanks. Start pumping the fuel. Now, the thing with the engineering, the construction, the EVA construction, is we have to be mindful about part attachments. You can't move a part that has other things attached to it. So we have to do some disassembly and reorganization. Normally you would not be able to just kind of unscrew the engines because they're kind of mounted into the tanks with plumbing and all sorts of things that you can't really move without a whole entire team. But here we can just, glue the fuel tanks together. So what should we do? We should move the engineering unit there and relocate the solar panels. We honestly only really need the one solar panel, which is some extra mass that we can get ourselves. Let's see, we can do that. This fuel tank's empty, and we can't stick it on there, so we're going to glue that to the side with our handheld laser gun. So now we only also need one engine, I think, with the mass that we have. I'm just going to stick that there for now. And the tank is too heavy because it's full. Okay. Well, we'll be a little asymmetric. So I want to make sure I line up the engine with the center of mass, which is not too far off set, surprisingly enough. I guess the capsule's really heavy. So I could put it right there. That should be good. And now center of thrust. Yeah, that looks about lined up. We might be thrusting a little off axis, but the capsule I think has enough torque that it will be fine. And it's close enough, really. Get back inside and measure our delta V now. Our staging is messed up. Extend the antenna. We have communications now. 539 meters per second. Okay, still not enough, but closer. So we are going to have to send a rescue mission. Well, at least they have a nice view. Tell the tourists that this is all part of the plan. I think we have something like 100 days of life support on this, so we're not really pressed for time, but it would be good to get them home, because I think these tourists did not really sign up for this. What else can we do? Yeah, we can't remove the parachute either because it's too heavy. We'll have to send a rescue mission in future episodes. Until next time.